Rain slid down the glass walls of Havenport Memorial Hospital, blurring the city lights into long streaks of white and gold. Inside room 417, Elara Whitmore sat perfectly still, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone pale. The doctor's words still echoed in her ears. "Your grandmother is awake, but only for a short time. Her heart is failing. There's something she keeps asking for her last wish." Elara swallowed. Her grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, was the only family she had left. The woman who raised her, protected her, and believed, more than anything, that Elara deserved a life filled with love and stability. And now, Margaret's final wish was tearing Elara apart. "She wants to see you married," the doctor had said gently. "She keeps asking about your husband." Elara let out a hollow breath. There was no husband. Margaret had always worried about Elara being alone in the world. In her fragile state, the fear had twisted into certainty. Certainty that Elara would be left unprotected once she was gone. "I just want to know she won't be alone," Margaret had whispered earlier that day, her voice thin but firm. "I want to see her married, even if only once." Only once. That was the problem. Elara was 26, fiercely independent, and drowning in responsibilities. She worked 2 jobs, paid medical bills she could barely afford, and lived in a tiny apartment that smelled faintly of coffee and exhaustion. Love had never fit into her life. There was no time for it, no space for heartbreak. Yet here she was, faced with a choice she never imagined she'd have to make. Tell the truth, or lie for one day. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A reminder from the temp agency flashed on the screen. "On-call shift available, event support tonight." She hesitated, then she accepted it. The charity gala was held in a historic downtown hotel. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and people dressed in wealth Elara could barely comprehend. She wore the only formal dress she owned, borrowed heels pinching her feet as she moved through the crowd with a clipboard in hand. That's when she saw him. He stood slightly apart from the others, tall and composed, wearing a dark suit that fit him like it was tailored to his silence. His presence wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. People glanced at him, then looked away, unsure. His name badge read, Rowan Hale, event security consultant. He noticed her staring. "You look like you're planning an escape route," he said calmly. Elara blinked. "I sorry, just working." He nodded, as if he understood more than she said. Minutes later, chaos broke out near the entrance. An argument between guests, raised voices, tension crackling in the air. Rowan stepped in effortlessly, diffusing the situation with a quiet authority that made even angry men step back. Elara watched, something tightening in her chest. Not attraction, not yet. Recognition. This was a man who carried weight, someone who knew how to stand firm when things went wrong. And suddenly, an impossible idea formed in her mind. She found him later, near the service hallway. "This is going to sound insane," she said, heart pounding, "but I need a favor, a very strange one." Rowan studied her face, not dismissive, not amused, just attentive. "Go on. I need someone to pretend to be my husband, for one day, just a few hours actually." Silence stretched between them. Rowan's jaw tightened slightly. "Why?" Elara's voice cracked despite her best effort. "My grandmother is dying. It's her last wish." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Does she know it's a lie?" Elara shook her head. Rowan exhaled slowly, as if weighing something far heavier than a simple request. "What happens after today?" he asked. "After today, we never see each other again." She didn't know why saying that hurt. Rowan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. "All right," he said, "one day." Relief flooded her so fast it made her dizzy. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll explain everything. We just need to go to the hospital. There's paperwork, signatures, witnesses." "Slow down," he interrupted gently. "If I'm doing this, I'll do it properly." Elara frowned. "Properly." He met her gaze, steady and unreadable. "For one day," Rowan Hale said, "I'll be your husband." Elara had no idea that this single lie, written on a hospital form, was about to rewrite her entire life. Like and subscribe for more stories like that. The hospital chapel was never meant for weddings. Its white walls were too plain, the wooden benches too quiet, the air too heavy with prayers that had more to do with endings than beginnings. Yet that night, under dim yellow lights, it became the stage for the most dangerous lie Elara Whitmore would ever tell. She stood outside the chapel doors, fingers trembling as she smoothed the wrinkles from her dress. It was still the same borrowed dress from the gala, elegant, but worn with exhaustion rather than joy. Rowan stood a few steps away, watching her carefully. "You don't have to go through with this," he said calmly. "We can still stop." Elara shook her head immediately. "If I stop now, she'll know. She'll see it in my face." Rowan studied her. Up close, he could see the cracks she tried so hard to hide, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her jaw, the way her shoulders carried years of responsibility. "Then look at me," he said quietly. She did. "For the next few hours," Rowan continued, "you don't carry this alone. I'm here. Act like it." Something about the certainty in his voice steadied her breath. She nodded. Inside the chapel, Margaret Whitmore lay propped up in a wheelchair, wrapped in a soft blue shawl. Her skin was thin, almost translucent, but her eyes, those sharp, loving eyes, brightened the moment Elara entered. "There you are," Margaret whispered. "I was afraid I'd miss it." Elara forced a smile and stepped forward, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Rowan followed. Margaret's gaze shifted to him. "So," she said softly, studying his face, "this must be the man who stole my granddaughter's heart." Rowan didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, lowering himself slightly to meet her eye level. "And I promise to take very good care of it." Margaret smiled, a real one, deep and peaceful. Elara's chest tightened. That wasn't part of the plan. The officiant was a hospital chaplain, called in last minute. The witnesses were 2 nurses and a doctor who had seen too many endings to question beginnings. The ceremony was brief, but the emotions were not. "Do you, Rowan Hale, take Elara Whitmore to be your wife?" Rowan glanced at Elara. For a fraction of a second, the world fell silent. "I do," he said. Elara's throat closed. "And do you, Elara Whitmore, take Rowan Hale to be your husband?" Her mind screamed this is a lie, but her heart whispered just for today. "I do," she said softly. When the chaplain declared them married, Margaret clasped her hands together and let out a shaky breath of relief. "Thank God," she murmured. "Now I can rest." After the ceremony, Elara wheeled her grandmother back to her room. Rowan walked beside them, one hand resting protectively on the wheelchair handle. Margaret watched the small gestures, the way Rowan slowed his steps to match Elara's, the way Elara leaned unconsciously toward him. "This one," Margaret said suddenly, "he's different." Elara froze. "Different how?" "He doesn't look at you like a rescuer," Margaret replied. "He looks at you like a partner." Rowan looked away. Elara felt her chest tighten again. Margaret reached out and took Rowan's hand in her fragile grip. "Promise me something," she whispered. Rowan turned back to her. "Anything." "Promise you won't let her disappear into her strength," Margaret said. "She's been strong for too long." Rowan swallowed. "I promise." Elara opened her mouth to protest, but Margaret had already closed her eyes, a peaceful smile resting on her lips. The heart monitor beeped steadily, too steadily. A nurse stepped forward quietly. "I'm sorry," she said. "She's sleeping now deeply." Elara stood frozen. That was it. The wedding, the wish, the goodbye. Hours later, Elara sat alone in the hospital corridor, staring at her hands. She was married, on paper, to a man she barely knew. Rowan approached slowly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "She fell asleep smiling," he said gently. "That matters." Elara nodded, tears finally spilling over. "I didn't even get to say goodbye." "You did," Rowan replied. "You gave her peace." Silence settled between them. Then Rowan spoke again. "The paperwork is filed. Legally it's done." Elara laughed bitterly. "Yeah, guess I should say thank you, husband." Rowan didn't smile. "There's something you should know," he said. She looked up. "When I agreed to this," Rowan continued, "I told myself it was just a job. One day, one lie." "And now?" Elara asked. His gaze held hers, steady and unsettling. "And now," he said quietly, "walking away won't be that simple." Elara's heart skipped. Before she could respond, a doctor approached. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Your grandmother passed peacefully a few minutes ago." The world tilted. Rowan's hand found Elara, automatically. She didn't pull away. As grief crashed over her, one terrifying truth settled in her chest. The lie had ended, but the bond hadn't. And whatever this marriage was, real or fake, it had only just begun. The days after the funeral blurred into one long, colorless stretch of time. Elara moved through them like a ghost, signing papers, accepting condolences, nodding at words she barely heard. Margaret Whitmore was gone, and with her, the last anchor of Elara's childhood. But grief wasn't the only thing sitting heavy on her chest. The marriage certificate lay, folded inside her bag. Rowan Hale, her husband, a word that still didn't feel real. The reading of the will happened 3 days later in a quiet law office downtown. The walls were lined with books that smelled of dust and age, and the air carried a seriousness that made Elara's stomach twist. Rowan sat beside her, silent, composed. He hadn't left her side since the hospital, not during the funeral, not during the paperwork, not even when she tried to tell him she was fine on her own. She was. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Margaret Whitmore left very clear instructions, he said. Most of her estate transfers directly to Elara Whitmore. Elara let out a small breath. But the lawyer continued, there is one condition. Rowan's posture stiffened slightly. Elara looked up. What condition? The lawyer slid a document across the desk. Elara must remain legally married for a minimum of 6 months from the date of marriage. The room went silent. Elara stared at the paper. That has to be a mistake. I'm afraid not, the lawyer said gently. Your grandmother was concerned about your future security. She believed marriage would provide stability, emotionally and legally. Rowan spoke for the first time, and if she does, the lawyer hesitated, then the estate will be transferred to a charitable trust. Elara's hands began to shake. 6 months. This wasn't a one-day lie. This was a sentence. Outside the office, Elara finally broke. This is insane, she said, packing the sidewalk. 6 months, I don't even know you. Rowan leaned against the building, arms crossed. I know. I asked for 1 day, she snapped. 1 lie. And your grandmother turned it into a safeguard, he replied calmly. She was protecting you. I don't need protection, Elara said sharply. Rowan's gaze softened, but his voice didn't. You've been protecting yourself your entire life. Let someone else do it for a while. She stopped packing. That hit too close. They sat in Rowan's car for several minutes without speaking. The city moved around them. Horns, footsteps, life continuing as if nothing had ended. Finally, Elara spoke. I won't trap you in this, she said quietly. We can get the marriage annulled. I'll walk away from the inheritance. Rowan turned to look at her. You'd give up everything your grandmother left you. Yes, Elara replied without hesitation. I won't build my life on another lie. Rowan studied her face for a long moment. Then he said something she didn't expect. I won't walk away. She frowned. Why? Because this isn't about money, Rowan said, and it's not about paperwork. He paused. It's about a promise I made to a dying woman. Elara's throat tightened. She trusted me with you, Rowan continued. I won't break that. That night, Elara unlocked the door to her tiny apartment and froze. Rowan stood behind her, taking in the space. The cramped living room, the mismatched furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. You can't stay here, he said quietly. I've lived here for years, Elara replied defensively. You can barely breathe here, Rowan said. And if we're doing this, if we're staying married, we need to look married. Her heart skipped. What are you saying? My place is bigger, he said, and it avoids questions. She laughed softly, bitterly. So now we're roommates. For now, Rowan replied. Rules, boundaries, no pretending in private. Elara hesitated. Living with a stranger scared her more than grief ever had. But being alone scared her more. Fine, she said finally. 6 months, then we're done. Rowan nodded. 6 months. Later that night, lying awake on the couch in Rowan's apartment, Elara stared at the ceiling. She could hear him moving in the other room. Quiet, respectful, distant. This wasn't love. This wasn't romance. This was survival. But as sleep finally crept in, one thought refused to leave her mind. Why did being married to a stranger feel safer than being alone? Rowan's apartment didn't feel like a place someone lived in. It felt like a place someone stayed between missions. Clean lines, neutral colors, no photographs on the walls, no personal clutter. Everything had a purpose and nothing invited comfort. Elara noticed it the first morning she woke up there. She sat up slowly on the couch, the unfamiliar ceiling reminding her that this wasn't temporary anymore. 6 months. 6 months of shared air, shared lies, shared silence. She padded quietly into the kitchen. Rowan was already there. White shirt, sleeves rolled up, coffee brewing. He glanced at her, then immediately looked away, not out of discomfort but respect. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied, unsure of what tone a fake wife was supposed to use. He slid a mug across the counter. Black, no sugar. You drank it that way at the hospital. She paused. You noticed. I noticed things, Rowan said simply. That was the first crack. They established rules that day. Clear, firm, necessary. No touching in private. No questions about the past. Separate rooms. No emotional dependence. And above all, this marriage was an act. It worked, at least on paper. In public, however, the act demanded more. Rowan's colleagues noticed first. At a small security firm gathering, introductions were made casually until Rowan placed a hand at the small of Elara's back. "My wife," he said smoothly. The word sent a strange heat through her chest. She smiled on cue. "Nice to meet you." Someone laughed. "Didn't know you were married, Hale." Rowan squeezed her hand just enough to be convincing. "We're private." Elara felt it then, the shift. The way eyes lingered, the curiosity, the quiet envy. And for the first time since Margaret's death, she felt chosen. That feeling scared her. The first jealous moment came unexpectedly. At the grocery store, a woman approached Rowan near the produce aisle, confident, familiar. "Rowan," she said, smiling, "didn't think I'd see you here." He nodded politely. "Claire, you disappeared," she said lightly. "Didn't even say goodbye." Elara stood a few feet away, holding a basket, watching something tighten in Rowan's posture. "I got married," he said. Claire's smile froze. Elara stepped forward instinctively, slipping her arm through Rowan. "Oh," Claire said slowly, "lucky woman." Rowan didn't deny it, and for reasons Elara couldn't explain, her chest hurt. That night, tension filled the apartment. Not loud, not angry, just heavy. "You didn't tell me people from your past might show up," Elara said quietly. "You didn't ask," Rowan replied. "I didn't think I needed to." Silence stretched. Then Rowan said something unexpected. "I didn't plan to marry anyone, ever." Elara looked at him. "Not because I don't believe in it," he continued. "Because my life doesn't leave room for it." "Then why agree to 6 months?" she asked. Rowan met her gaze. "Because you needed someone who wouldn't leave." The words landed deeper than he intended. Elara turned away quickly. "You're good at saying the right thing." "I'm terrible at it," Rowan replied. "That's why I don't say much." The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Elara came home early from work, head aching, heart heavy, and found Rowan in the living room, shirt off, a fresh bruise forming along his ribs. She froze. "What happened?" she asked sharply. "Nothing," he said automatically. "That's a lie." He hesitated too long. "You don't get to say nothing," Elara said, voice trembling, "and then expect me to ignore it." Rowan looked at her then, really looked. "You're not responsible for me." "I know," she said, "but I care." The word hung between them. Care. Not love, not yet, but dangerous enough. Rowan exhaled slowly. "Work, it comes with bruises." Elara stepped closer before she could stop herself. Her fingers hovered near the injury. "May I?" she asked. He nodded. Her touch was gentle, human, real. And in that moment, every rule they had written began to blur. Rowan's voice was quiet. "This is how it starts." Elara looked up. "How what starts?" "Where pretending stops." Her heart pounded. She pulled her hand away. "We need to be careful," she whispered. Rowan nodded. "I know." But neither of them moved. Because they both knew the truth. This marriage was no longer just about survival. It was becoming something neither of them had planned for. Something real, something dangerous. The first sign that something was wrong came quietly. Too quietly. Elara noticed it on a Tuesday morning as she left the apartment for work. The hallway felt the same dim lights, same hum of the elevator, but the air carried a tension she couldn't explain. When she reached the parking lot, her steps slowed. A black sedan sat across the street, engine running, windows tinted. Watching, her chest tightened. She told herself she was imagining things. Grief did that. Stress did that. Still, she walked faster. That evening, Rowan came home late. Later than usual. Elara was in the kitchen when she heard the door open. She turned and froze. Rowan's jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid. There was a cut above his eyebrow, hastily cleaned but still red. "What happened?" she asked immediately. He didn't answer. Instead, he locked the door, then the second lock, then checked the windows. Elara's heartbeat accelerated. "Rowan." He finally looked at her. "We need to talk," he said. That tone, the same one he used in tense public situation, sent a chill down her spine. "About what?" she asked. "About why this marriage stopped being pretend the moment someone followed you this morning." Her blood ran cold. "You knew." "I saw the car," Rowan said. "Same one that's been circling my firm for 3 days." Elara took a step back. Circling your firm, Rowan, what aren't you telling me? He hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked unsure. Rowan sat across from her at the kitchen table, forearms resting flat against the surface like he was bracing himself. My work isn't just event security, he said slowly. I figured that out, Elara replied. You don't get injuries like that from controlling crowds. He nodded once. I used to work private contracts, Rowan continued. High risk. Extraction, protection, sometimes confrontation. Elara swallowed. For who? People with enemies, he said. People with money. And those enemies, she said quietly, don't forget. No, Rowan replied, they don't. Silence filled the room. Then Elara asked the question. She was afraid to hear the answer too. Am I in danger? Rowan didn't answer right away. That was enough. The next day it happened. Elara was leaving her second job, a small bookstore, when a man stepped into her path. Mrs. Hale, he said smoothly. Her stomach dropped. I think you have the wrong. You're Rowan Hale's wife, the man continued, smiling without warmth. Congratulations. Her pulse roared in her ears. I don't know you, she said. No, he agreed, but I know him. The man leaned closer. Tell your husband he should have stayed retired. Elara didn't remember the walk home, only the way her hands shook. Rowan was already there when she arrived, standing by the door, phone in hand, eyes sharp. You were approached, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Elara whispered. He knew my name. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. I'm sorry, he said. I never meant to bring this into your life. Fear surged through her, but something else rose with it. Anger. You don't get to decide what I can handle, Elara said, voice steady despite her racing heart. You brought me into this by marrying me, fake or not. Rowan looked at her then, truly looked. You're right, he said, which means I don't get to walk away anymore. That night, Rowan changed everything. He installed additional locks, set up cameras, gave her a new phone. Emergency contacts only, he said. You don't share your schedule with anyone, not even coworkers. Elara crossed her arms. You're acting like this is war. For some people, Rowan replied, it is. She studied his face. You're scared, she said softly. He didn't deny it. Not for myself, Rowan said. For you. Something inside her shifted. This wasn't obligation. This was protection. The moment that changed, everything came days later. They were walking back from a restaurant, public, crowded, when Rowan suddenly stopped. His hand tightened around Elara's wrist. Don't move, he murmured. She felt it then, the presence behind them. Rowan stepped in front of her instinctively, his body a shield. A voice called out, amused. Relax, Hale just wanted to say hello. Rowan's eyes were dark. You're done, he said coldly. You come near her again and we have a problem you won't walk away from. The man laughed. She's a weakness, you know that, right? Rowan didn't blink. She's my wife, he said, and you don't touch what's mine. Elara's breath caught, not because of the threat, because of the certainty in his voice. The man backed away slowly. We'll see. When he disappeared into the crowd, Elara's knees nearly gave out. Rowan turned instantly. Are you okay? She nodded, still shaking. He pulled her into his chest before thinking. She didn't resist. She clutched his jacket, heart pounding against his. For the first time she felt it. Not safety built on lies, but safety built on presence. On choice. Later that night, Elara lay awake in Rowan's bed, her couch abandoned without discussion. Rowan stood by the window, watching the city. This is the part where you tell me to leave, she said quietly. He turned. No, he said firmly. This is the part where I protect you. She sat up, even after 6 months. Rowan's jaw tightened. I don't know what happens after 6 months, he admitted, but I know this. He stepped closer. I won't let anyone hurt you, ever. Elara looked up at him, fear and trust colliding in her chest. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a fake marriage anymore. This was a bond forged under pressure. And if it broke, it would destroy them both. The rain returned that night. Not the soft kind that whispered against windows, but the heavy, relentless kind that felt like it was trying to wash the city clean of its secrets. Elara sat curled on the edge of the bed, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the floor. The apartment lights were dim. The silence was louder than any storm outside. Rowan stood near the window, arms crossed, posture alert, but his eyes were tired. They hadn't spoken in over an hour. Fear had settled between them, thick and unspoken. Finally, Elara broke. I don't sleep well, she said quietly. Rowan turned. Since the threats. She shook her head. Since long before you. He waited. I wake up expecting to be alone, she continued. I always have. Her voice didn't shake, but the truth in it did. Rowan moved closer slowly, as if afraid one wrong step might make her retreat. You don't have to tell me, he said. I want to, Elara replied. Before us gets more complicated. She took a breath. My parents died when I was 17. Car accident. One night everything was normal. The next, she stopped, swallowing hard. They were gone, no goodbye, no warning. Rowan sat down in front of her, level with her eyes. After that, she said, I learned something dangerous. What? He asked. That if you don't rely on anyone, they can't leave you. The words landed heavy. Rowan's jaw tightened. That's not strength, he said quietly. That's survival. Elara nodded. Exactly. Rowan looked away then, his own silence cracking. You think you're the only one running from ghosts? He asked. She frowned. Rowan. I failed once, he said suddenly, on a job. Her breath caught. There was a woman, he continued. Not my client, someone caught in the middle. I hesitated, thought I could handle it without force. His hands clenched. I was wrong. Elara reached out instinctively, but stopped herself. She died, Rowan said, and ever since then, I promised myself I'd never let emotion slow me down again. He laughed once bitter. Then I married you. The air shifted. Being near you scares me, Rowan admitted. Because I feel things I trained myself not to feel, and if something happens to you. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Thunder cracked outside. Elara stood abruptly, packing. So what are we doing? She asked, voice breaking. Because this doesn't feel fake anymore, and it doesn't feel safe either. Rowan stood too. I don't want safe. She froze. I want real, he said, but I won't cross a line you don't want crossed. The space between them felt electric. Elara whispered, what if I don't know where the line is anymore? Rowan's breath slowed. Then we stop, he said, right now. But neither of them moved. The rain beat harder, and then Elara did something she'd never done before. She stepped forward and rested her forehead against his chest. Rowan went still. I'm tired of being strong, she said, voice muffled. Just for tonight. His arms came around her, slow, careful, like she might disappear. You don't have to be, he said. That was it. The last wall shattered. They didn't rush. They didn't pretend this was casual. Rowan lifted her face gently, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was soft, uncertain, heavy with meaning. When they finally broke apart, Elara's hands were trembling. This changes things, she whispered. Yes, Rowan replied. After this, she said, there's no going back to pretending. Rowan rested his forehead against hers. I stopped pretending the moment I chose you, he said. Tears slipped down Elara's cheeks, not from fear this time, but relief. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone in the dark. Later, wrapped in the quiet aftermath, Elara lay beside Rowan, listening to his steady breathing. This wasn't a contract. This wasn't an act. This was trust, fragile, terrifying, real. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a new fear surfaced. If this ended, it would break her worse than anything before. The morning after the storm, the apartment felt emptier than ever. Elara woke to silence. Not the comforting quiet of early dawn, but the hollow stillness that makes the heart ache. Rowan's side of the bed was cold, his side of the room untouched. Her phone buzzed, a message from him. We need distance. I can't risk this. Her chest tightened. The walls they had broken through together now seemed to rise again. At work, she barely focused. Every phone ring, every footstep outside the office sounded like a warning. The bookstore's familiar smell of paper and coffee couldn't anchor her anymore. She kept rereading Rowan's message, hopping for a line she had misread. We need distance. She didn't know whether to scream, cry, or fight. Instead, she left work early and walked the rainy streets, head down, letting the city blur around her. Rowan, meanwhile, was in his car across town, gripping the steering wheel as if it could hold him together. He had made a choice he thought was right. Protecting her meant staying away. Protecting her meant sacrifice. But every red light, every honking horn reminded him of the kiss the night before, of her trembling hands, of the warmth she brought into a life built on control and distance. Days passed. They exchanged only the necessary, emails about bills, messages about groceries. Rowan kept his tone neutral, clipped, professional. Elara felt her chest cave in. She wanted to scream at him, to beg him to explain why he left, to tell him that being apart didn't make her safer, it made her crumble. One evening, she couldn't take it anymore. She drove to his firm, heart pounding, rain soaking her hair. She needed answers, closure, anything. Rowan saw her before she could knock on the door. Elara, he said, voice low, almost a growl of suppressed emotion. You shouldn't be here. Why? She demanded. Why did you leave me? Was it the threats? Was it me? He shook his head, pain flashing across his eyes. It's not you, it's me. I can't. You can't what? Tell me the truth, she snapped. He flinched, as if her words were a knife. I can't risk losing you, he said finally. And being near you, every rule I've lived by, every promise I've made to myself, it all falls apart. I can't control it. Elara's hands shook. You think leaving me makes me safe? Rowan, do you even hear yourself? He didn't answer, he couldn't. That night, Elara returned home broken. She stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm outside, realizing something terrifying. Her heart had tethered itself to Rowan long before the rules had blurred, and now being without him was unbearable. Meanwhile, Rowan sat alone in the firm's rooftop lounge, staring at the city lights. He realized something he had been denying. Without her, nothing mattered. The walls, the rules, the act, it was all meaningless. He had left to protect her, but in doing so, he had endangered the one thing he could never survive losing, her. The next morning, Rowan made a decision. He needed to fix this, not for pride, not for rules, not for contracts, for love. And for the first time since their 6-month sentence began, he knew exactly what he had to do. Confront the consequences of the lie, the act, and the bond that had already turned dangerously real. Because without her, nothing else mattered. Rowan didn't hesitate. He drove through the city streets with a singular focus, rain still streaking the windshield. Every light, every honking horn, every shadow reminded him of what he had almost lost. By the time he reached Elara's apartment, his mind was made up. No more distance, no more rules, no more pretending that his heart could stay in check. Elara sat at her kitchen table, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea. She hadn't expected him. She hadn't expected anything. When the knock came, she froze. Rowan didn't wait for permission. The door swung open. Elara, he said, voice firm, low, controlled, but threaded with emotion she couldn't ignore. We need to talk now. She started, but he cut her off. No words first, look at me. Her gaze met his. It was as if the world had contracted to just the two of them. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. I left, he said, taking a single step inside. And that was the biggest mistake of my life. Her chest tightened. Why? Because leaving you didn't protect you, he said. It only proved how much I can't be without you. You're not a liability, Elara. You're everything. Her throat went dry. She wanted to speak, to protest, but the words wouldn't come. I'm done pretending this is just an arrangement, Rowan continued. I'm done with walls. I'm done with rules that keep us apart. He stepped closer, the distance closing until she could feel his presence like a tangible weight, grounding her. I love you, he said simply, cutting through the tension. The words struck her, raw and unpolished but heavy with truth. Elara's heart raced, her lips trembled. Rowan, you don't have to say it back, he interrupted softly. Not yet, just believe me. Believe that I can't walk away, not now, not ever. Tears burned her eyes, but she smiled, an expression of relief, vulnerability, and something deeper. I believed you, she whispered. Rowan closed the remaining space between them, cupping her face in his hands. Then stop hiding. Let me in. The kiss that followed wasn't cautious. It wasn't measured. It was consuming, two hearts colliding, desperate for proof that the other was real. Every breath, every movement said what words couldn't. They were no longer pretending. Later, they sat on the couch, entwined, drenched in the aftermath of the storm and their confession. You really think we can survive this? Elara asked, voice trembling, fingers laced through his. I know we can, Rowan said, eyes dark with determination. Because I don't want survival, I want us. Every day, every fight, every moment, I choose you. Her hand found his, gripping tight. I choose you too. And for the first time since her grandmother's death, Elara felt entirely safe, not because of lies or promises made under duress, but because of trust, presence, and love that had blossomed in the unlikeliest of places. The 6 months they had committed to suddenly felt irrelevant. Rules didn't matter anymore. Their bond had crossed into something unshakable. Outside, the city glistened in the rain, but inside, Elara and Rowan had found their own universe, a place where they didn't have to pretend, a place where they could finally be together. The calm didn't last. Not even a week after Rowan and Elara had declared their truth, the past returned with a vengeance. It started with small signs. Unfamiliar faces lingering too long near her workplace, fleeting shadows outside her apartment window, emails with nothing but a single word: watch. Elara's chest tightened every time she noticed them, but now she wasn't alone. Rowan was always there, always watching, always anticipating. One evening, as they left a quiet cafe, a sleek black SUV slid silently behind them. "Rowan," Elara whispered, gripping his arm instinctively. He didn't respond with words. His hand went to hers, squeezing it, and he scanned the street with practiced precision. Then the car accelerated. Two men stepped out, blocking their path. "Elara Whitmore," one of them said, voice smooth but cold. "You're coming with us." Rowan's body shifted instantly, protective, predatory. "You don't," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Not her, not today." Before she could process, he moved with lightning speed. One man lunged. Rowan blocked him with a precise, controlled motion. Elara froze, heart racing, until she realized she wasn't a bystander anymore. "You stay close," Rowan ordered, "and trust me." The alley became their battlefield. Rowan moved like a shadow, deflecting, dodging, striking, not to kill, but to neutralize the threat. And beside him, Elara discovered a fierce resolve she hadn't realized she possessed. She ducked instinctively, kicked when needed, and trusted Rowan's commands. "Now left," he barked. She pivoted. They moved as one, their unspoken connection sharper than any weapon. The fear was there, but so was something else. A bond that had been tested by grief, lies, and closeness. Now it was tested by danger. Finally the men retreated, the SUV speeding away into the city night. Rowan's hands found Elara, steadying her. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough but controlled. Her heart was pounding, not just from the encounter, but from the way he had shielded her, trusted her, and relied on her instinctively. "I am," she said, breathless, "because you didn't leave me." He smiled faintly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "I won't, not ever, and neither should you. We face this together from now on, always." Elara nodded. Her chest ached in a new way, a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and a deep, undeniable trust. That night back in the apartment, rain drummed on the windows again. But inside, they didn't need the storm to remind them they were alive. Rowan sat close, hands intertwined with hers, eyes scanning for any sign of threat. "Today," he said softly, "was a test, not of skill, not of danger, but of us. And we passed." Elara rested her head against his chest. "We did," she whispered, "because we're together." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Exactly, and no one will ever change that." Outside, the city glistened, dangerous and alive. Inside, Rowan and Elara had discovered something stronger than fear, stronger than grief, stronger than any fake vow. A trust forged in fire, unbreakable and real. The night was alive with tension. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the city lights. Rowan and Elara moved silently through the deserted alley behind her apartment building, senses heightened, hearts synced. The black SUV that had haunted them for days reappeared, engine rumbling like a predator. Two men stepped out again, but this time, Rowan didn't hesitate. He positioned himself in front of Elara, every muscle coiled, every instinct alert. "You don't get her," Rowan said, voice low, deadly. "Not tonight." The men lunged. But together, Rowan and Elara moved as one. She ducked instinctively, kicked precisely, followed his commands, and for the first time truly believed in her own strength. Rowan neutralized threats with controlled efficiency, his eyes never leaving hers. One of the men tried to flank them. Rowan caught him mid-step, twisting his arm with precision. Elara saw it all, the danger, the adrenaline, the unspoken trust, and realized how far they had come. They were partners in every sense, forged not just by circumstance but by choice. Finally, the attackers retreated, the SUV screeching into the night. Rowan turned to her, brushing rain-soaked hair from her face. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough but gentle. "I am," she breathed, "because you didn't leave me, because we did it together." He pulled her close. "Always together," he whispered. Later, back in the apartment, safe at last, Rowan held her in the quiet aftermath. "Elara," he said, voice unsteady, "I don't want pretending anymore. I don't want half-truths, half-lies, or rules to keep us apart. I love you. I've loved you since the first day I promised your grandmother I'd protect you, and I can't imagine life without you in it." Tears blurred her vision. "I love you too, Rowan. I have for a long time, but I was afraid. Afraid to admit it, afraid to trust it could be real." He cupped her face, brushing her tears with his thumbs. "It's real. Every heartbeat, every breath. You're my world." The kiss that followed was no longer cautious. It was consuming, a culmination of every fear, every lie, every stolen moment that had brought them here. Hours later, they sat together, rain-soaked city lights reflecting in the window, hands intertwined, hearts finally at peace. "This," Elara whispered, "this feels like home." "Home is wherever you are," Rowan replied. "And nothing, no threat, no lie, no past can take that away." And just like that, Rowan and Elara's journey found its true beginning, not with contracts, not with rules, but with love, trust, and courage. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a dramatic, emotional storytelling journey. Every like and share helps bring these unforgettable moments to life. Here to love, bravery, and never pretending when the heart knows the truth.